So let's talk about this now, because South Africa's long-delayed switch from analog to digital TV has missed yet another deadline. More than a decade after it was first promised. It's probably closer to 2 decades. The project, overseen by over a dozen ministers since 2008, has already cost more than 2 billion rand. The Communications Department is now asking for an extra 803 million rand to finish it. What's behind these delays? And I mean, is there a point to it anymore? We speak to tech expert and staff editor-in-chief, Toby Shapshak. Toby, it's a good morning. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. Does the digital migration matter anymore?
It's a good question, Arabile. Good morning. You know, this was something that was supposed to be completed by July 2015. We're a decade over deadline. The reason that this process was begun, let's remember, is when people first started broadcasting television in the 70s and the 80s in South Africa, that spectrum wasn't used for anything. Now that spectrum is very valuable for the cellular industry. The lost opportunity cost is just unbelievable, and the networks will tell you what that is. It would have allowed faster, better rollout of networks, etc. But what's happened is that the solution, and I haven't really looked at this, Arabile, since before COVID. And when the Sunday Times asked me for comment, I was just astounded at the lack of logic and the lack of just what seems like basic common sense. You know, how do you solve a problem where people can't get a signal anymore? Well, the easiest solution, to my mind, is you buy a ETV OpenView decoder. They cost $800, or 6060 will deliver one for 730. Then you get a DStv satellite. OpenView ETV's satellite service is free to air. It's on the same dish as MultiChoice, which means if someone's ever had DStv before, doesn't use it but has a dish, it works for that. The installation cost, we know, is 850 rand, up from 650, and that, to my mind, is the easiest. Some like 2,000-3,000 rand to solve the problem. Instead, the Department of Communication, and this is historical, I would imagine, has another system. We have no idea what the system is or what they're installing, but it simply can't be easier and simpler than that. So there's 68,000 households left, 67,943 to be exact. And I worked this out. I got a Jewish accountant friend to double check my numbers. Comes out at just under 12,000 rand per household. 800 million rand for 68,000 households just sounds insane, Arabile.
Yeah.
I don't speak maths first language like you do, but it just, and the lack of common sense is just mind-boggling. I can solve that problem for 2.5-3 grand. That's the problem. And you know, this is my contention. Everybody in South Africa solves problems like a big business. I really think small businesses solve the biggest problems because you don't have the resources. You can't go to government and say, we need 800 million rand. Nobody has applied their mind. Apparently, the set-top boxes are sitting in a warehouse somewhere. What are they? What do they do?
Is it still a worthwhile investment, though? Considering that we now have streaming, fiber, mobile data, it's all reshaped South Africa's consumer or how we consume media in this country. And I know that we still talk about digital integration and how people are able to actually latch onto the digital economy, etc., because it's not as advanced as maybe some other countries. But we're still better off than very many. So should it just still be the same kind of investment anyway? Should Treasury even be looking at this anymore?
Well, why don't they spend the 800 million or 2 billion? They've spent 2 billion on this. It beggars belief. What have they spent the money on? You know, you could loot a hospital for that much.
Wow.
It's just, what have they done? What is the technology available? We have to just take a step back, Arabile, because that's a common question I get. Well, why don't you just let everyone stream? It's all good and well if you have the internet readily available. I say if you have fiber or you have a postpaid cell phone contract, you are the internet 1%. And in that place, it's really quite wonderful if you have, excuse my alarm, if you have good internet access, because you can just stream something. The second you start dropping down below 10 megs, streaming's not that good. Also, the cost of cellular data is very big.
Yeah.
So the government has a requirement, a constitutional requirement, to provide access to information services, which happens to be the SABC. You can get all of those on OpenView. I mean, I'm not trying to do an advert for OpenView, but it just seems like the most cost-effective, commonsensical solution, and you could turn it on tomorrow. You know, that's how quickly it could be done. We live in a different age. Of course, you need an installer, but to get the product to someone, you don't need that anymore. Takealot can deliver it. 6060 can deliver it. You know, these are the options that exist 10 years later, 10 years over deadline, you know, not to allege the government doesn't know how to keep to a deadline, but there are so much more simple, pragmatic, easy ways to do it. If someone has a satellite decoder already on their house, you don't need a technician to install it. There's an 850 Rand savings. And, you know, this is kind of what happened, Arabile, with why suddenly Eskom didn't have to do so much load shedding about a year and a half ago, when it suddenly dropped off a cliff, the load shedding, because everyone had done what the industry calls self-provisioning. You know, we sorted out our own problems. So people put on solar panels. People who couldn't get the SABC maybe got a satellite decoder. There are lots of installed satellite decoders all over the country that aren't being used. They're relatively cheap. It's the same satellite as DStv. They're definitely going to be around for a long time. So I just don't understand why that isn't the better solution. 800 million Rand for 68,000 households is just ridiculous.
Let's also just think about how currently we still sit with electricity prices being a pressure point, water being a lack of supply in some areas too. We still have load reduction, even though they plan to take that off for quite some time then. Have we just got too many political roadblocks in our country to advance our tech in this country, and now we're going to just remain behind any kind of tech revolution?
I mean, I'm glad you asked me a political question. You know, I don't often get them, but yes, Arabile, technology is the great enabler. Internet access, just basic internet access. The World Bank publishes statistics about how, you know, there's about a 10% uptick in economy for every however many broadband connections. You know, these are old figures. There's no disputing the fact that access to information makes a country and an economy a better place. The kinds of information, of course, become a different story. But if you have the tech enablers, you know, I say this all the time. What are you know, America got gifted by a bunch of now long since bankrupt companies. They got gifted a fiber network, which meant you walked into any shopping mall, there was free Wi-Fi. There was just free Wi-Fi everywhere at school. So what were the kids of that generation doing? They were working how to convert videos to the internet up. You know, they invented YouTube, then, you know, Twitter. All of those things came about from people using technology and discovering there was a gap and building a product. Instagram to share videos and have a little filter, WhatsApp for messaging. All of this stuff happened because that generation of kids had internet access from when they were teenagers. Of course, now we know it's a bad thing. Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T. It is an ironic name, given that the man is the current thinker on teen mental health, and he says, don't let kids have their own smartphone or social media access till they're 16. But what could be possible in South Africa is significantly more. There's so much red tape in just about everything. I know people who are trying to get visas to come and live in South Africa. They want to bring their money, they want to invest, they want to buy houses, and they just hit the roadblock that is the Department of Home Affairs. Nonetheless, Leon Schreiber has shown that where there's a political will, there's a way. That sounds quite nice. He has really shown that if you want to clean up home affairs, you can. And there's just this constant stream of new initiatives. Imagine one day, Arabile, you and I won't have to put a physical driver's license into our wallet. That's the only reason I carry a wallet anymore. I don't carry cash. I don't carry a credit card. Everything else in our life is digital. And you can see that all of a sudden, the changes are going to happen in our country because
they're happening
the home
right
affairs system
now.
is so much more efficient.
Yeah. They're happening as we speak, Toby. You're so right. And I think that's the thing here, is that if we got this right, imagine how much it would help in future. It's always good chatting to you, Toby. Let's do this again more often.